Hey there everybody, Brenden here with Common Motor. That's common-motor.com on the internet. And today we're going to be doing a carburetor rebuild for the 175 and 200 family of motorcycles. This includes the CB175, the CL175 Scrambler, the SL175, CB200, and CL200. Stay tuned, let's dive on in. Now, in my opinion, the carburetors that came on the 175s and 200s are actually some of the simpler carburetors that Honda used during production. Case in point here, we have some carburetors off a CL175 right here. The CBs are identical. The 200s are slightly different, but not radically different. And what we have going on the bench is we have them set up as if they would be on the bike. We wanted to keep the throttle cable attached because we want to show you some details of them coming apart. What's important to understand about these carburetors is both carburetors are virtually identical, but they are left and right specific. They're mirrors of each other. So we're going to do one, and of course all the information applies to the opposite side as well. So let us assume that you have the carburetor still on the bike. We've removed the air cleaners. In this case, we've unbolted the manifolds back here from the engine, which is where you need to unbolt them from first. And we have the throttle cable assembly and the choke linkage assembly. So we'll separate that out here in a second. But I want to point out some details here. We're showing, this is one of our new throttle cables for the 175s and 200s. And you might notice this little red sleeve on it. And it's because these cables are not the same length. They are asymmetrical. And the red sleeve will go on the right carburetor. We'll actually go into more detail of that when we do the sync on the bike, but that's some information right there. So I slide the boot up. We have our throttle cable here. So the boot is an important piece that keeps that, that's an adjuster there for the sync later on. And this big flange here just unscrews. And it should only be finger tight. If not, I have to gently get on it with a pair of pliers. And this whole slide assembly comes out like that. Let's take apart the slide from the cable. First, I'm going to take my spring, pull it up here, fingers, hold it back, and the cable slides out just like that. Then I have my spring, and then I have my top cap right there. If I actually want to get more into it, I can go ahead and take off my adjuster, make sure it turns because you'll need it later. And then we do have a rubber gasket here that we're gonna pry off here, like that. I'd like to point out a few details on the slide here before we disassemble it. That's gonna make reassembly a lot easier. First off, we have this long skinny slot here. This is an alignment slot that goes into the notch inside the carburetor body. It's also where our cable goes. You see a little round hole there. That's where we pull the cable out of. On the opposite side here, we have the shorter wide notch that has an angle cut into it, and that controls the slide height for the idle speed. But most importantly, I want to talk about this cutaway here versus this flat back here. Now, this cutaway side of the slide faces towards the air cleaner in each carburetor, whereas the flat side in the back faces towards the engine. And the reason that's important is because you can mix up the slides. They are left and right specific, and if you put the wrong slide in the wrong carburetor, you'll go bonkers trying to figure out why your bike doesn't run right. So that is a very important distinction there. We'll talk about it on the rebuild side, but yeah. Now that we've seen some details of the slide itself, let's go ahead and take the needle out. I'm going to put my finger over the end here because there's a spring that wants to pop out as I push on the needle. There it is, right there. A wavy looking thing, and then the slide and the needle. Here's the order of the pieces coming together on the slide. And of course we start with the slide, then we have the needle that goes into the slide. Do take note of the clip position on the top of the needle here because you want to emulate that going back together. They need to be the same on each carburetor. We have the retainer which holds the needle into the top of the slide, the spring, the gasket, top cap, and then the cable adjuster, and then the outer ring that holds the top cap to the carburetor body. All right, I'm gonna separate the two carburetors out, and we gotta take this choke linkage apart. There's a very small cotter pin in here. Sometimes it's destroyed where you can't take it out. If it's destroyed, no big deal. You can cut it out if you need to. You can replace it later. In this case, it's in pretty good shape, so let's see if I can get it to come out here. There we go. Just pushing on it gently with the screwdriver. If you're lucky, you might be able to use it again. If not, we'll do something else in the repair video. Come on. Put my finger on that washer there. There it is. Cotter pin. Just a washer. And now that comes apart. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and take off this overflow tube here. Get that out of the way. And then I'm gonna go ahead and cut this off of here because I'm gonna cut here first to get out of the way. Get that off. There we go. Great. Go ahead and take off this intake manifold here. Do that right there. That shouldn't be too tight. Here's the manifold, like that. And then there's an O-ring in the back side of the carburetor here. The other side of the manifold that goes to the engine also has an O-ring on it. So that O-ring side goes to the engine, and the flat side will go to the carburetor here. And I'm just gonna get a screwdriver and pry that O-ring out, which is rock hard. They usually are. The next things I'm going to take out are going to be, this is my idle stop screw, my idle speed screw right here. A lot of times you can just take it out with your finger, and that one's loose enough, it will come out, but sometimes it's stuck. Like that, and it has a spring on it. Make sure you get the spring out. I'm going to take out, this is my idle mixture screw, or it's actually an air bleed screw on this style carburetor. So let's go ahead and take that out. It's also going to have a spring on it as well. And there's two different styles of these screws. Let's see what kind we got here. And we have what I call the hollow screw. You see their hole there? On the side of the screw, there's a hole that's perpendicular to the screw body. There's another one on the end there. This means that you have always a minimum idle bleed. And then there's a spring in there. Look at that, it came right out. Sometimes they're stuck. Last piece I'm going to take off here is going to be the drain plug. This carburetor has the late style large plug, and it's the same that we have on the website. It's a little stuck. Fuck, it is stuck. Clearly it had not been removed quite some time. While you might be tempted to want to take apart this linkage here for the choke, controls the choke linkage here, I don't advise taking this apart for any reason unless it's stuck and you have to get it unstuck, because the pieces are very critical and we have the choke operating fine on this one, so I'm not going to take it apart. All right, we're going to pull off the flip bowl here to get to the guts inside, and it's held on with this kind of spring clip. The idea is that you could pop it off with your fingers, and in this case it moves off pretty easy, like that. However, every now and then I know that these are pretty stuck, and if you find that this happens to be really stuck on your carburetor, you can take your flathead screwdriver, get underneath right here where the pivot is, and just kind of twist the screwdriver and pop the wire clip out, like that. And then you can take it loose. In fact, you can just take off this whole wire clip altogether, put it aside. All right, let's see what treasure we have inside the carburetor here. Fun times. Good and gooey. It's definitely been a minute since this is this is run. Okay, let's go ahead and finish taking this apart. We'll take apart the idle jet right here, which sometimes is called a pilot jet. It's coming out. Not too bad considering how dirty the carburetor is. All right, there's that right there. Here's our main jet and our emulsifier tube. I like to separate these out before I take the emulsifier tube out. I got a 7mm wrench here. I have it on the hex of the hex right there, and I'm just gonna see if I can break that jet loose. There it is. That is just totally clogged. I can't even see what the number of sizes. We'll know what that is later. Take that out of there. And here's the emulsifier tube. That one happened to come loose. Well, there's always something. That carburetor float pin is pretty stuck, so I've put the carburetor in the vise here real gently, grab it the front and back. And first thing I'm gonna do is put a little bit of carb cleaner on it to see if I can kind of break some of that gumminess off here. Get a little bit of PB Blaster, so we can make sure we get some oil in there. First thing I'm gonna do is take my punch and just try to push it with my hand to see if I can push it loose without using a hammer. I don't want to go too crazy on it because I don't want to break those towers. All right. We're gonna have to tap on it ever so gently. There it goes. There it goes. I got it going one way. I'm gonna tap it the other way just to kind of make sure we get the work loose. Because really you should be able to push that out with your finger. There we go. Now it's wiggling. All right, I think we're gonna be home free now. There we go. That's it. Our float pin. All right, here's our float coming off. Right there, it's the original one. It's not too bad. Float needle here. Grab that. Take it out. And then we gotta remove this. I think this one's a 10. Nope. It's an 8. Okay, let's go take this out right here. That's our float needle seat coming out. I'll take this gasket out of here because we're going to replace that. And this one is gooey, I can feel it. Oh man, just real gently, just prying that out. It might break out in chunks, you don't know. Plenty of residue left behind. Our gasket coming out. So we got one more part to remove. It's going to come out through here. It's the emulsifier tube discharge nozzle, the carburetor. And this is where the slide. Go ahead and rotate this towards you guys, the camera, so you can see it. So inside there, the slide needle goes into is a little brass nozzle. So we're going to knock that little emulsifier tube out real quick. I'll rotate the carb vertically. In fact, here's a good trick to doing this. I'm going to take this out of here. And it's good. This is where you want to use the vise in a kind of a clever way. I'm going to bring the vise a little bit closer together, where the carburetor body is being supported on the jaws here, but I'm not squeezing anything. It's just sitting and resting up here on the flats. All right, let's see how I can bring it a little tighter, but I don't want to actually touch anything. All right, so now the carb is supported on the vise, but I'm not squeezing it. I'm just holding it up. I'm gonna get some of that carb cleaner in there, very top. Go to the back here. All right, so here's the discharge nozzle right here. I put a little bit of carb cleaner on it, hopefully to help break it loose. And I'm just gonna use a punch right there on the top, because we're going to replace it in the carb kit, and I'm going to real gently just going to tap on it, not really hard. Oh, that didn't take much at all. That was the gentlest tap. Push it out the rest of the way with a smaller punch. Something smaller, because it's already dislodged now. There it goes. Popped right out. I do want to point out there are two sides to it. We have this kind of tapered side. This is where this thing we just tapped on that faces up inside the carburetor body or the venturi. The needle goes. If I flip it over, you see how we have a kind of flat, blunt side. That's the side that will go. That's inside the carburetor body. And when we drive it in from this direction. We drove it out from that direction. So it didn't take very much force to take it out. You shouldn't, but you still have to tap it out of place. So that concludes the disassembly of carburetor for the 175. So the 200s are the same. Again, in the opposite side carburetor will also be the same. It's just reversed on some of the parts, but same body, same architecture. This one happens to be particularly dirty, so we'll get this cleaned up before the next video where we do the reassembly. Again, I don't like to take apart the choke mechanism if I don't have to. If it's moving, leave it in place. Clean it with it in place. And make sure you get everything as spotless as you can. If it's clean enough to eat off of, it's clean enough to run. That also means getting into all the little passages with a piece of wire or guitar string to make sure they're clear, and all this kind of goo, varnish, molasses is been removed, and it is absolutely spotless both inside and out. On our next video, we'll actually do the reassembly and show you all the bits and pieces with that. But until then, into the parts washer this thing goes.